Check, check, check. Everything seems to be working. Just got the go-ahead from Darren T, who just wrapped up his live stream. And what we're hoping today is that we're not going to see OBS disconnecting as frequently as it has in the past. Now, to be fair and accurate, I am using OBS 27. So it's a slight upgrade from 26 point whatever, but I think the settings are the same, and I've done a few different experiments, but what happened was I was testing a stream and YouTube complained that the keyframe interval was too low, and it was set to auto. Turns out it was keyframing about once every 8 seconds, so I manually changed it. YouTube said make it less than 4 if you wanted to, you know, be reliable. So I switched it to actually 1 second, and so far it's been streaming here for a bit without any reconnects. But, you know, it could happen. It could definitely happen any old time. So, as mentioned over yonder on Darren's live stream, I am indeed working on the second episode of a 24-minute anime, for which I kind of sort of have a distribution pathway lined up for it. So it is something that I expect to actually, you know, get out there. That doesn't mean it'll be successful, but we're going to do our best, right? And so here, Valerie's now passing through behind me. We'll see if we can see her behind in the webcam. Is she up? Up! We cut a little tiny bit of her head there. That was good. That was good. Hey, Darren. Okay, so this is going to be, I had mentioned over there on Darren's live stream that what we're going to be doing is frame by frame animation. So it's kind of maybe appropriate that what Darren was focused on today was essentially puppet animation. It would be the idea of breaking a character up into pieces and setting up a rig. And he did I wasn't there the whole time, but it looked like did a really good job of explaining the nuance of how you do that in Tahoma2D or OpenToonz. I've done plenty of that in my time. Usually I use the plastic tool for sort of quick and dirty secondary animation, like you see it right there in that little clip that we're seeing on the screen. When these characters just kind of turn their bodies and things, that's typically the plastic tool, because it's just easier to do it that way than to have to redraw a bunch of stuff, right? But today, the shot we're moving up to right now as we speak is pretty much the kind of shot that you can't do that way, because there's enough, you know, gyrations that the character is going to be going through that it makes it, it doesn't make sense to try to do a rigged approach. So, hey, Maria. So what we're going to do is draw, and we'll see. So I'm jumping ahead right here so we can kind of see what we've got, what we're leading into in terms of recent shots that I've done over the past week, and coming up now on the shot that I did yesterday. I guess it's 3 shots away, actually, to be perfectly accurate. That was a couple days ago. And I did some touch-up on that yesterday, and then yesterday I did these 2 shots. So now we have Mel up peeking over, and then this is what we're working on today. So this is going to be interesting because we're seeing, hey Tom, we're seeing Tianara sneak out from under the canvas of the tent. And so, and then the next thing we see, I don't know if it makes sense from the storyboard image, but really what this is, which is 2 shots from now. So not the one I'm actually working. Up, and there it goes. There it goes. OBS just did it. OBS just did its thing. Doggone it. Cannot get OBS to not do that. Okay, and then there's Tianara after she gets out of the tent. She's sort of glancing around, looking both ways, evaluating her situation, and then she winds up taking the same pathway that Mel took. If we roll back to here, that pathway up the bluff, well, Tianara is going to take the same path, and then they're going to both be sort of peeking up around the ledge, and then realize that they are like face to face, and blah kind of situation, and then she threatens him with the blade and all the rest. So it's going to be, it's a time of action. You didn't know. Well, you know what? I will say this. I noticed OBS telling me over here that it reconnected, but the actual, like, but for the first time, like maybe ever, I immediately looked over at OBS and it was still a green light, not a red light. So it's like the reconnect was really fast. Now here on OBS 27, I will tell you that I am. It's actually doing 30 frames a second, not 24, and it's not being rescaled either to broadcast HD. So it is a full HD signal. So I would think probably the live stream today is a little. I would expect it's a little cleaner, a little sharper maybe. Now I do show a delay of 2 seconds, so that tells me that that's really good news, because what that means is you guys didn't see the delay, but yet it's building up a delay in the stream. So it is, you are hearing me 2 seconds later than what I'm actually saying, but yet it appears that it's actually doing the reconnect thing better. So if just on that factor alone, I would recommend taking a look at OBS 27. Huh, okay. Okay, yeah, I don't think it's being rescaled. I mean, I can look at my settings while the stream's going on, and doesn't look like I've got anything. Yeah, it does not say rescale the output, so I won't belabor it and waste everyone's time talking about OBS, because we'd like to get rocking on animation here. But yeah, I mean, it's always good if we can kind of get it dialed in. So this is what we need to work on. So let's get busy. Oh, you did OBS 27 yesterday. Cool. Well, we can compare notes, I suppose. So let's get back to Tahoma. And for this shot, I'm thinking we're just going to start from scratch. We're going to just start clean. So let's go File, New. Yeah, we'll save all. What the heck. Now, somebody on Darren's stream did ask about how to do just hand-drawn character animation in Tahoma. So, and I posted something there in the chat. You know, that's pretty much exactly what I was working on today. So I don't have Darren's stream in front of me, so hey Max. So I don't remember who posted that. Maybe it was it was Rav something. I think it might have been Rav, who I was chatting with about rigging, you know, about setting up a puppet animation. So anyway, we're going to go, this is going to be shot number 553. So my first 2 steps are always to just save my actually strike that. First step is to change my output settings. Okay, so this is my method, and others can use a different method, but what I do is I go to scenes, which is the default for Tahoma. I put in the number of the scene I'm working on, which is 553 out of, you know, there's like 800 shots in this show so far, and about 700 are done, and we're in the home stretch here on episode 2. So let's see here, and then within the numbered scene name, I give it another folder called render, and I tend to render in JPEG mode, and I give the image sequence the same name, which is a number, as the numbered scene, and that seems to work well for me. There's no reason to actually render it right now, but what I'm going to do here is now save the scene, and we'll go save scene as 553. You can see the last one was 552, so I'll just change the name, and boop, we're ready to go. Okay, so now sometimes people ask me, yeah, the gang is gathering, it's great. Okay, people ask me, why do you use Tahoma2D instead of OpenToonz? Sometimes that question comes up, and the basic reason is that if I actually, true disclosure here, because I switched to OBS 27, I don't have a display of the of my other windows set up to show, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag this down here. So what I'm doing is I'm taking Sony Vegas, which is what I use for editing, and I'm going to take this actual storyboard shot and boop, cut it to the clipboard. Okay, so I can cut it to the clipboard and then come over to Tahoma and just hit Control V, and it's going to paste it in through the Windows clipboard. You can't do that in OpenToonz. So that really is the one killer feature that causes me to use Tahoma instead of OpenToonz. As far as I'm concerned, other people may have a different opinion, but my opinion is, other than that, it's pretty much parity between Tahoma2D and OpenToonz. For my purposes, they're the same program, other than the cut and paste. So, okay, okay, Hans, I'm gonna dispute you on that. Here's the deal. You certainly are saying that because JPEG is a lossy format, and if you look really close at the discrete cosine transformation artifacting that occurs in JPEGs, it can be visible. It's visible if you're looking at a resolution of, say, you know, the JPEGs are saved at, let's say, 82 to 85% or less. Then it becomes very visible. Anything over 90, typically you don't see the artifacting unless you look really, really close. My argument would be this. Once you take an image sequence that's in motion, and especially if it's getting scaled, like you know, you're watching it on a phone or something, the discrete cosine transformation artifacting in the JPEG format is by far the least of your concerns in terms of what's going to make your show look like crap. There's lots of things you can do to make your show look like crap. JPEG artifacting is the least of those concerns. And you would have to be rendering them out at something like, you know, 70, 80% to have them actually look poorly. So why do I use JPEG? Just because you wind up with a lot smaller files. Therefore, they stream faster, the real-time playback performance is more reliable, yada, yada, yada. If I wasn't using JPEGs, I wouldn't be using TIFFs. I'd be using pings, just because I like ping. Obviously, they've got an alpha channel, and everything else in my pipeline is ping, 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 ping. Everything's ping except the final image sequence that I render out and bring into my edits. So that's that. And come on, let's face it, for the last 20 years, there have been any number of highly professional video productions that have been created using AVIs in the motion JPEG format, which also uses discrete cosine transformation. Again, it is arguably, it is lossy. There are artifacts if you look real close. But remember, what I'm not doing is I'm not using JPEGs and then re-rendering, recompressing, re-rendering, recompressing, and adding artifacts on top of artifacts. That I don't do. Everything along my whole pipeline is lossless except that final step of rendering it out to an image sequence. So my argument would be, yeah, I mean, that's a fair. Hans is making a fair point. There's nothing that Hans could say about this topic that where he wouldn't be correct. He would be correct. How much it matters is something we'll find out. You know, in my experience, when I've compressed these types of things to MPEG-4, or well, typically, actually, when I'm giving assets to a distributor, actually, what they usually want is they want a QuickTime in ProRes format, which is a lossless. You know, it's a lossless. It's MPEG-4 under the hood, I believe, but it's you know, it's a lossless format, and that's what they typically want. Is they want an MOV file. So usually I use FFmpeg to turn it into a QuickTime, you know. But for most of the people here, these are kind of non-issues. But Hans makes a good point that it probably is true because of the very, very complex multiple ways that MPEG-4 is compressed. I'm sure he's correct that if you looked really close, you could probably find more artifacting going from JPEG sources to MP4 than going from TIFF sources to MP4. There's no disputing that. It's a question of whether it matters. And you know, and a good example of when you really start asking yourself if it matters is one thing that I've observed with Tahoma is that under the hood, I'll see if I can find it here, but if we look closely, you'll find that sometimes you get, that's, boy, I really need to redo that background. Right, you guys probably can't see it, but if you look really close, this gradient right here, like gradients, especially in anime, are a really cheap, easy way to add image quality overall, you might say, okay? And we have that here, and actually, if you look really close, you can see banding, okay? Well, the banding is, I'm pretty sure that the banding isn't because this is a JPEG image sequence, because you see the banding in Tahoma before you ever render it, right? So my point to Hans is, it's like the 80-20 rule. You kind of say to yourself, okay, there's things in my pipeline that are going to damage my final result, right, in some way. And what you want to do is you want to find the biggies that make a big difference that everybody's going to notice versus the little things that only the really, really picky people that are concerned about the details care about that most people don't care about, right? I would consider this banding issue to be a much, much bigger issue than any artifacting we would ever get in the output, render compression stage. That's just kind of an example of where I try to put my focus on. Okay, well, yeah, and it could be that. See, Hans is making another good point, because it could be, since Tahoma and OpenToonz favor TIFFs, it could be, and I don't know, Tom might be able to speak to this, is that under the hood, in doing processing behind the scenes as it's compositing stuff together in order to show you what you get to see on your screen, if Toonz is actually using the TIFF format, if Toonz is using TIFFs under the hood, and then at some point converting them to either PNGs or JPEGs or whatever, is it possible that the banding we see is actually because OpenToonz or Tahoma are using TIFFs under the hood? Something to consider. And Tom, I mention you because I know you're involved with the development, and it might be something that would be worth looking at. Yeah, banding issues, Max. I've seen it anytime I'm using gradients to punch up the visual quality. Like, I put a gradient over a scene in overlay mode, and it just makes the colors richer. It saturates them and pumps up the contrast a bit. You tend to see with OpenToonz or Tahoma, you see banding appear, and it appears before you ever render anything. So there's something about the way, yes, exactly, that's right, Hans. Toonz is married to TIFF. I haven't done the hard work of, you would have to go in, change all your well, the easiest way to test it would be to actually create some assets in Krita and bring that are PNGs, bring them into Tahoma, and then see if banding occurs, even if the raw assets that you're working with to be PNGs. So the cutting and pasting wouldn't work, because when I cut and paste from Krita, I would presume that Tahoma's going to deal with it internally in whatever format it likes best, which is TIFF. So I don't know. There's an OpenCV set of objects, ways they represent data in grids. Lossless, I'm sure. Well, yeah, you would think. TIFF is not inherently lossless. I mean, I would guess that it's a function of bit depth, and I'm also guessing that the default flavor of TIFF being used under the hood is 8 bits per channel, which is pretty standard. So in most circumstances, almost all the time, if you're working with 8 bits per channel of whatever or image format you're working with, it's very, very rare that you're going to get any kind of a problem with banding. However, when would you get a problem with banding? I'll show you. This is when you would actually get a problem with banding. It would be a situation where you have a very continuous gradient going across an underlying image that consists almost completely of flat areas of color. Think about it. This is completely flat color and a single gradient operating over the whole thing. in this one scenario where I see the banding right here, this is where you really, really want that gradient to be, well, you want the underlying compositing to actually be 16 bits per channel. Then you would not have the banding problem. So again, we're back to this question though. For most people, most of the time who are sitting there watching my show, does this matter at all? I can tell you it doesn't matter. I mean, like 99.9% of the time, it's never going to matter. But it is definitely something that is, if you want to encourage adoption by bigger professional studios who, you know, are considering this open source tool, this type of thing, what we see right here, is a deal stopper. No question about it. It would definitely be something that would make you say, nope, screw it. I'm not going to use this tool. They got to get their banding issue fixed. And you would have to have 16 bits per channel processing under the hood, or probably more likely, actually, what you would have is you'd have intermediate processing of actually probably 32-bit floating point, I would guess. And then the only thing that ever was resolved down to 8 bits per channel would be the final composite that you get to see on your screen when you're working with the software, right? What does the banding word mean? Okay, Max, again, it's probably hard to see. You can test it in OpenToonz by creating a cartoon like this that has, like this is just purely gray. Now ignore the rim light, okay? Ignore that effect for our purposes. Okay, so this character only consists of gray, dark gray, flesh tone, purple, brown, and yellow. There are only, what was that, 6 colors, 5, 6 colors, and whites in the eyes. There are only flat colors. Well, when you take a flat color, and now you take a gradient, you know, like you'd get if you used an airbrush, okay? And you take that perfectly smooth, mathematically perfect gradation of color, let's say from black to white. So it's a perfectly smooth gradient from black to white. And you take that and you overlay it over top of your flat color. The problem that you see, you would not see if your underlying image was not a cartoon. If it was a photograph, there are so many gradations of color in the regular imagery that the gradient would never show itself in creating banding. It would never happen. You wouldn't. It would be there actually, but you would never notice it. You couldn't see it. This is the worst case scenario. So you've got this gradient of color that goes from black to white, wrapping over top of an area of flat color. Now what happens is, because the color is understood by the software to consist of 8 bits per channel, which I'm not going to unpack for you and explain, but what it means is that across the whole screen of the image, it's got to break that smooth gradient into smaller levels of what are essentially flat colors. It's got to take the smooth gradient and resolve it to discrete colors instead of a perfectly smooth gradient. Okay? I hope that makes sense. That would be solved completely if the underlying processing of color was being done with 16 bits per channel, because then the resolution of color is so high that you would never see the problem. I mean, actually, the problem, the truth is, mathematically speaking, the problem would actually still exist. But the reason you would never see it is because the banding would occur at a frequency higher than the actual pixel resolution of the image you're looking at. So that means the little boxes that represent pixels, each of which has to be filled with one single color, right? The banding would be actually happening within a single pixel. And so you wouldn't see it. That's the advantage of higher bit resolution when you're dealing with color. So I think everyone who knows about this stuff will agree that I've described it accurately. And yet it's not pixelation. But for your purposes, all you have to do to test it, Max, is do what I did. Create a perfectly flat cartoon with maybe 3 areas of flat color, and then in another level, overlay it with a perfectly smooth gradient and see if you see banding. Okay? So it's important because, again, like I said, it's a deal buster in terms of Tahoma or OpenToonz being adopted as a professional tool. Now, the reality is it is a professional tool, and there's a pro version of it. And I don't know if, let's find out right now. I actually have never looked at this. This is going to slow down your preference, but what you're looking at is, do we have the ability in our preferences to choose between 8 and 16-bit color? I'm pretty sure we don't. It's typically the case that if you do have 16-bit color, because you can do it in Krita, for example, it's going to slow down your performance. It's going to absolutely slow down your performance. One reason being your GPUs are typically highly optimized to deal really fast with 8-bit color channels. I think I'm correct in saying that. So I don't think there's anything in your preferences that actually allow you to tell OpenToonz or Tahoma to use 16-bit color under the hood. You can do it in Krita, and I've never seen the banding problem with output from Krita. So I'm looking at the messages here. So Max says, "Yep, you got okay. You've shrunk JPEG in the okay, okay." So and the artifacting you get with JPEGs is something absolutely completely different. Has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about actually. Now, and in fact, I would this will be a controversial statement. The reality is that a poorly compressed JPEG that's reproducing flat colors should probably show less banding because there's noise in the areas of flat color. But that's a totally controversial thing to say, because you're basically saying make your quality as crappy as possible so people can't see how crappy it is. Which makes no sense. Okay, J Studios. Clip Studio is a great program, and everybody I know that uses it loves it, so I'm going to leave it at that. It's all opinion. I've used Clip Studio. I have Clip Studio. I don't like the interface. Okay, I don't have fun using it. Okay, despite all its wonderful capabilities. And what I have found is that between OpenToonz, Blender, and Krita, there ain't nothing going on in Clip Studio Paint that I can't do. So for me, it's just not a compelling proposition because I really, really don't like the interface. That's just one guy's opinion, and perish the thought that I would be opinionated. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we got a few things we have to deal with here on Tianara, and by the way, it looks like OBS has not disconnected and reconnected in quite a while, so that's great. Clip Studio in your main painting app is a replacement of Photoshop. Yeah, and I've got a good friend, Kanan White. It's a fairly well-known comic book artist. And Kanan's huge on Clip Studio Paint. He loves it. And I remember when he started using it, I don't know, it seems like it was 3 or 4 years ago, and he was just like, wow, I love this program. I tried it, and I'm like, whoa, I hate this program. So it is all opinion. So the question now of the day, now that we're 40 freaking minutes into this, is how do you do character animation frame by frame? What are the major ways to mess up the animation movie? Have a crappy script to start with. Have a crappy script, write lousy characters, have everything be overly predictable. It's the basic stuff that can wreck it. Photoshop is okay. It's not that great for animation, right? Yeah, I mean, yeah, and you sort of have to, with Clip Studio Paint, you sort of have to wrap your head around a little different way of thinking about animation because of the way it actually creates animation folders. I could totally see where there's a lot of power in that once you do wrap your head around it with the way that you could use those, those folder-based animated assets in creative ways. But anyway, I mean, for me, I'm getting done what I need to get done here in OpenToonz or Tahoma and Krita. So for me, people always ask about Blender too, and I've been using Blender for over 20 years. I'm the old fart in the crowd as far as Blender goes. It's just not the right tool for this job that I'm working on. So, 'tis what it is. All right, so now the question becomes, are we going to how are we gonna break this down? You can see what she's doing. She's basically pushing the tent up, and she's gonna climb out. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna put a few indicators on here. So now this is, because I cut and pasted it into Tahoma, this is a raster level. A raster level is like what you get when you're using My Paint. The main operating driver of the tool you're using when you use the brush is the brush. Meaning everything I use is a pencil here. If I change the color, it's still a pencil. I've just changed the color. When you have a smart raster level or a Toonz raster level, the operating driver is the color or the palette entry, because if you want to have a different looking brush, you have to switch to a different item in the palette. So that may not make perfect sense for everybody, but it is a bit of an operating principle. The palettes in the smart raster levels give you the ability to change the colors after the fact, the way the Blender grease pencil works. Same idea. Okay, quite useful. But when you're just sketching, you know, and just kind of blocking in a drawing, for me, raster levels are fine. So what I'm doing is I'm changing the colors specifically so that I can block in things that I think I want to do in this shot. So we've got her coming out from under this tent, and my thinking is when we cut to the shot initially, we're going to have this hand is actually going to be down here. So I'm just going to draw a square for now, or a rectangle I should say, to represent the hand and the blade. So I'm just indicating for myself what I have. Okay, and then I'm going to say let's put her elbow here and her hand here. So she's just kind of sitting there, and this tent would be loped over her like that. So when we come into the shot, she's already poked her head out. Okay, so we're using a little bit of anime common sense in terms of the economics of it, because this is a really drawing heavy scene that I'm working on, or I shouldn't say a scene, it's a shot. The whole sequence of shots together is a scene. So now what we see is, so that would put her other shoulder here. So here's her two shoulders, and kind of feeling like this is wrong. If this hand were laying there like that, it would be crunched closer to her body like that, which means that potentially that blade is creating a bit of a danger for her, like she's going to cut herself. So this is not quite going to work. Okay, let me rethink that a little bit. So when she sneaks out, her hand, so this is just like her knuckles and fingers, right? So there's her hand, and I'm going to say when we cut into the shot, let's just have this hand be like this. Not trying to draw it super carefully right now. So really what would actually be going on is under the canvas of the tent, her elbow would be up like this. So she's got her weight on her hand, and her other hand is sort of squished out a little further here. Okay? And maybe just to emphasize safety for the kids at home, we'll go ahead and angle this a little bit so the blade is kind of pointing out away from her. Okay, so that's kind of our starting point when we cut to the shot. And then what we have to do, let's go ahead and just make this color blue. Okay, so what we've got to do is we've got to get her to flip her hand all the way up here. So this is going to be like probably a slight move and then a fairly rapid move, and then we'll get her to this position. Over, since we're 8 frames per second, that's probably going to happen over 4 or 5 frames. I mean, it's going to happen really quick. So max, you'll need to show weight of the tent by lowering her shoulders back. Yeah, well, we'll get to that. I was thinking about that. Right now, her shoulders are sort of hunched down. So the idea would be, so like this isn't quite right, because really this should be like that, right? So this is what's going on. We don't really see her shoulders. I mean, I've got an indication there of where they are, but there's the weight of it. You know, imagine there's some grass here, and this, as I say, this hand is just sticking out a little further. I think we can probably even stick it out. I would say twist it less and actually have it out further like that. Let me see if that sort of anatomically makes sense. It does. I think that works. That's foreshortened. Okay, so what's going to happen is she's going to actually have to roll her body weight. And when she rolls her body weight, let's go back to blue here. This shoulder's going to, this shoulder's going to come up, and this shoulder's going to come down. So at that point, the blade's probably not going to move too much. It's going to move a little bit, and that's going to allow her to jerk her hand up here to get up to this position, and so we're going to see the tent kind of go like this. So it's kind of where we go from there. So I would say, with that in mind, let's maybe turn the sketch down a bit, and let's go to a smart raster level. Oh yeah, first time buffering. Yep. Well, it's doing okay. We've got an overall buffer or delay in the stream of 4 seconds, so we'll see. Hey Chris, the show is going fine. I've got about 6 minutes to go to finish animation on episode 2, so 2 24-minute episodes, and I will certainly be going through a lot of scenes and doing improvements. So there's plenty of work to do. Could she push the sword out ahead of her and have it on the ground in front of her? You know, that's probably a good idea. I mean, that's probably the best idea, because if you were really doing that, that's what you do. I mean, that is pretty much what you do. So let me think about this for just half a second here. She's going to be... Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and ink her. I'm going to actually dive right in and start inking her, because I want to get this basic pose happening, and then we'll kind of go from there in terms of the animation. So, as I said, this is a complex shot. There are many things I could have done to make it easier. And I chose not to, because I kind of wanted the challenge of knocking out this shot, you know, kind of the hard way. So so we're going to work with what we have to work with. And so, as I say, I want to get her kind of blocked. And then this is kind of it's like I don't know what you call this type of a headdress, but I'm trying to move fast so I can just kind of keep it fluid and really capture TNR's characterization. Probably should turn the smoothing off for the moment. It's just making it harder to draw accurately. Nope, no good. Sorry. That's pretty close. Yep, that's pretty close. Flipping my canvas to see if I got any weirdness going on, which I do. Why did an artifact just appear on my screen out of nowhere? That's weird. Oops. That is actually very weird. Okay, that's better. And so now this, like I said, this artifact just literally it just appeared when I flipped the canvas. That's very strange. That suggests some bugs under the hood. Okay, save it. Save our work. Save early, save often. Second buffer. Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen. So now we have a 5-second delay on this, the live stream. OBS, what are we going to do with you? Come on. Come on. I'm waiting for Tahoma to save. Save, Tahoma, save. Okay, there we go. All right, zoom out. Okay, so if we're going to do what Maria suggested, then I'm going to say, I'm going to really wing this here. I'm being bold, and I'm actually going to draw. That was wrong. I'm going to draw without a pencil test underneath. I'm going to go for it and see how I do. Okay. What was the... I got to look at the hilt. That's pretty pathetic. I've been known for like not always paying as close attention to the details as maybe I should. So let's... My friend Donio, the late great Donio, he used to rail on me so much for you know, the quintessential example was we were shooting a movie, and the the camera bag, you know, the camera bag or some other equipment would actually be in the background, you know, on the set. He's like, man, that's... I'm like, dude, no, that's cool. That means it's fun for the audience to find the mistakes, right? But he was OCD. The guy was OCD, and he couldn't deal with it. Brings back fun memories. Okay, so this is going to be... I'm actually going to... I'm really trying to get this foreshortening in there. It's bit challenging. Okay, we gotta... There's two shots. There we go. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty loosey-goosey sword design, that's for sure. I think we're probably okay here. I think we're probably okay. Right. Well, the model sheet aspect, you know, there's a point I get to where I've drawn the character so much that being on character becomes less of an issue. There was a time when it was more of an issue for sure, but as far as props go, and certainly to another degree costumes, you know, it's definitely I can be prone to getting sloppy from time to time. Okay, so I'm taking Maria's advice, and we're going to really just try to find our way here. Okay? So let's go on this grand adventure together. Okay, I see a problem here. In that, I don't buy the weight of it. I think it would be more like this. Okay, so she has already popped out. Boy, this is going to be challenging. I can see right now that I'm going to get this whole thing done, and the odds of getting this whole thing done and feeling like I didn't necessarily do a great job is kind of high. But I'm going to try my best. So, I'm moving forward. I'm rock and rolling with... I'm saving early, saving often, by the way. What we're going to do is we're going to cut the hand and the sword off from the rest of the body and move them and get them to where they need to be. And we'll worry about connecting the dots later, okay? Yeah, I mean, okay. Yes, Max, that would be helpful. I am not going to do that. There are times when I've done things like that. I've done, you know, rotoscoping or whatever, but nope, we're just gonna do it this way. And ultimately, will I perhaps excuse me, even wind up cutting some frames out or something, you know, because there's actually too much character animation. Okay. Now, if we really wanted to be nitpicky about this, again, I'm just animating straight ahead here, so if that slides, okay, let's be real. What's going to happen here? And again, I'm not going to worry about connecting the dots. So what I'm going to actually do now is erase all this detail in the tent, because all of those lines are going to have to be animated. So there's no point having them in there. What we need to do, as I always say, work from the known to the unknown. What we need to do is move the stuff that we know needs to move, and then figure out how other stuff would, respond to that. Okay, so why am I chopping this into pieces? I'm actually thinking I'm going to cut the tent there. It doesn't matter if it's a little different from frame to frame, because what I want to do now is I'm going to say there's a weight meaning W-E-I-G-H-T, reaction to this motion, right? So I'm going to grab the S key and I'm going to grab all this. We'll ignore this hand. She's anchored on her left hand. I'm going to rotate a little bit and push. Okay, so now we've got to take it even further on this frame. So you guys may agree or disagree with my assessment of what needs to happen here, but I'm pretty sure this is the right path forward, but I may turn out to be wrong. Yep. Okay. So now, D key. Now what we're going to do is we're not going to rest on this a long time. And obviously, by the way, of course, that line is wrong. So what we're going to do is take this hand and snap it away. We're going to have to draw our fingers. We're going to have to deal with that. But what does that do for me? Well, now I can go in and actually draw the hilt of the sword. Yep, which is kind of round here on the bottom. We can go like that. So she's... Okay, this would be held. I don't know quite how long, but I'm thinking it's probably going to be held for maybe like 4 frames. Yep, there we go. I was right. So I'm going to give it 2 frames at the beginning. Everything's happening fast here, folks. Okay, so she leans back a little, moves her arm forward. Yeah, I'm always really cognizant. Oh, that stinks. About the tree. Okay, so this actually, as far as I'm concerned, I've done well. I think I like the way that feels. Boop, bop. Okay, so the hand's coming back. I tell you, I don't even think I need to draw the fingers, because really what's going to happen here is this is a 1-frame transition. Nope. We're going to keep it simple. And now what we want to do is get her hand back there, because now she can use her weight. And frankly, honestly, folks, now you guys can weigh in on your opinions. Yes, balance and weight distribution. Exactly. Okay, so now I'm going to let you guys vote. It would be a fun and interesting challenge to do what I originally planned, which is have her kind of, well, let's see, from my perspective, her left shoulder would lean back and her hand would go up. There goes another buffer. So you guys can vote. J Studios, it's not released. People ask that every once in a while. It's as I say, I've got 2 episodes that are mostly animated, and I am very close to getting the the voices cast. Some of them I already know what the casting is going to be. Obviously, we've got to do the musical score, a 2-part pilot, so it's 48 minutes to kick off the show of a 12-episode arc. And we're currently talking to a platform that I can't name about maybe underwriting the show, and lacking that, which I suspect a deal probably won't come together on that. But if it does, that would be interesting, be worth considering. If it doesn't, then we're probably going to launch a crowdfund, and hopefully, we've got some good things lined up in terms of support to promote the crowdfund and just kind of underwrite the production that way. So There we go. So as far as release times, I think you're probably looking at third quarter, at best, to actually get it out there and get it into the typical platforms that one might expect. So my question was, should this be animated the way I originally conceived, where she kind of rolls over and pushes the tent out of the way with her hand up here? There's her hand. Okay. Or am I more correct in saying that, look, now that I've done this, according to Maria's idea of putting the sword out in front of her, doesn't it make more sense that she basically does a push-up? Shouldn't she just do a push-up and then her knee would come out? And by the time that happens, I'm pretty sure we're going to be cutting back to Mel. We just need to see her popping out. And then it's going to pop back to Mel ducking down behind the bluff, right? Okay, well, okay, so, but she just got rid of the sword. So it seems to me that, okay, so let me just show exactly what I had in mind then. Okay, if I'm going to run with what my instinct tells me is the right idea at this point, it's going to be to go ahead and hit the D key, and what I'm going to do is actually chop my character here, and she's going to probably enlarge just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit. Boom. Okay, we got a tween there. Hit the D key. So she's pushing up like that. So she's going to go boom. And then when she's here, this is going to be held for probably maybe 3 frames. I would say this, I mean, do I do a tween or not? I'm not sure. I'm actually feeling like this is, at 8 frames a second, you don't want to overdo your tweens. But let's keep rolling with it. Okay, so here, I just did something I didn't mean to do. Let's go here, hit the S key in order to select this, and I'm going to push her up even further. And then at this point, what would happen is we would see, I keep hitting the D key when I mean to hit the B key. Okay, so here you'd see probably this knee sneak out like that, right? And so here, I'll just kind of give a little indication of her bosom there, and then her arms would be pretty straightened up right there because they're basically holding her weight. Yeah, that seems to me. Okay, so we'll worry about draping the tent over her next, but and this is going to be kind of lost in shadow through here, so that would sit on the screen for maybe 3 frames, and then poof. Okay, so yeah, we got a little problem here because when this happens, really there would again be there'd be a reaction, right? So, right? That's what would happen. So now she's starting to come out, and at this point we're cutting to Mel. I mean, this scene doesn't need to go on forever. She should not drop the sword unless someone is about to take it. No soldier ever gives his weapon up. Yeah, but she's not a soldier. I would argue on that one. I think Maria's got a better idea because obviously she's going to climb out from under that canvas and immediately pick the sword back up. I mean, that's no mystery. And there's no one else around. It's not like, right? She just grabbed us. She's never held a sword in her life. Ever. She just grabbed it off the wall because she doesn't really see any better options. So, how long scenes do you usually do? I feel like I've done a way too long of a score or a scene with over 400 frames. Well, I'm not sure what your nomenclature is here. What do you mean? I'm doing the show is animated at 8 frames per second, but we're way past 400 frames. I tell you that. You know, I mean, um, well, Max, I mean, I think I get your terminology in terms of sort of putting her in a box that makes sense in terms of the role she's playing. Um, she's only innocent in regard to weaponry. Okay, I mean, um, her background is that of a bit of a pampered, spoiled brat, if you want to know the truth. Her mother's a rich landowner, and she got in this situation where she's pledged to be married to the prince. So she's got a pretty privileged life. She's a pretty soft life. She's not a tough. She's a tough person inside, but she's not yet a tough person on the outside. Let's put it that way. Here's the point. The tipping point is how heavy or awkward the tent canvas. Well, it is, and it's heavy. It is heavy. I would say. So at this point, what we have here, this is significant. What we have here is a 3-second long shot. Okay, this is boom, boom, boom. If we go over back to the show, you know, this is what we're seeing. It's all moving right along, baby. Okay, there goes Mel. You know, what the heck's going on? I don't want to be seen. Let's check it out. Blah, blah, blah. And then he sees her popping out. I mean, there's 3 seconds. The 3 seconds just ended. You know, I mean, you don't want to linger on this shot for very long. So even though it's a fun animation challenge, which I'm happy to do, I don't want to stretch it out into being a bunch of, you know, we're not going to do tons and tons of work for no good reason. At this point, that's the shot right there. I mean, look at it. Once that knee comes out, the shot is over. We've seen what we needed to see. We know she's coming out. It's time to get the show moving again, right? So I would, you know, so I don't approach this mainly from an animator's vantage point. I approach this from a, I approach this from a storyteller. Dress limits how far the knees can move from each other too. It does. It does. The whole thing. I mean, she's sneaking out. So, and she does need to move quick. That's the other thing. I mean, at any moment, someone could come into the tent from the front doorway, and now she gets caught leaving. So she's got to move here. There's no time to like be dinking around. So the most efficient way to accomplish that, given that this is a fairly heavy tent, is probably to put the sword down, get the heck out of there, and then pick it back up. You know? So I feel like that was a good choice on Maria's part. So anyway, let's run with it. So now what I'm going to do is hit the B key and save my work so that I can now deal with the weight of this canvas tarp that she is sneaking out from under. Okay? So we'll wait for Tahoma to save while I take a drink of my tasty beverage, which is just water. And then we're going to get that figured out. Okay? What we can't do is let things like stretch, right? So we got the B key here. Okay. Step 1, let's clean up the garbage. So I'm going to hit the eraser and just get rid of these. Anything that obviously is going to have to be redone or fixed, let's just get rid of it completely, because it's going to be way faster to just fix it. And if there's stuff that carries over multiple frames, which there will be, then we'll just cut and paste from one frame to the next using the selection tool with the S key. Okay, that looks fine. This is a bit of garbage that needs to be rendered, or drawn, I should say, more cleanly. So there's that. This stuff is all crap. Sorry. Pardon my French. Is crap French? I don't know. Okay. So now this, we don't know whether we'll need that in there or not. So, okay, back to the B key. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, we got this. Basically, that's fine. I'm not going to worry about wrinkles yet. And let's go ahead and allow ourselves a little bit of onion skinning just to make that easier. This, since she's in motion, I probably can trace this and it'll be fine. However, here, this is a good example of where probably we should take the S key, Control C, and just go Control V, just so we're not introducing chatter. We don't want to introduce chatter into the animation when there's something that's supposed to be standing still that all of a sudden is moving. So here we've got what the heck changed between shots 6 and 7, 7 and 8? I need to take a look at this. 6, 7, 8. Okay, this is actually a mistake. 6, 7, 8. Nothing changed. Probably we should stretch that down there so this is pulling it up off of the ground a little bit more. Yep. Get rid of that. Same thing. So, sorry about that. We're not trying to imply that it really stretches. Just kind of banking on the idea that there's a little bit of slack in the fabric. Okay. So now hit the save button and crap is merde. Use a lot. Okay. I don't know. I said that wrong, I'm sure. Long, draggy clothing needs attention. Uh-huh. Yeah, and she's definitely pretty overdressed at the moment. So, anyway. Let's just keep rocking here. Boom, boom, boom. Ew. Okay, so now I'm doing the same thing over here that I did over there. Just get rid of the stuff that looks stupid and definitely doesn't belong. It does create more cleanup for sure later because I got to reconnect those dots, but geez, oh Pete, let's just get rid of this stuff that's... The problem is, the reason you don't want this stuff in here is because you're tempted to make it work. You know, you're tempted to take something that's an artifact from an earlier sketch or pose or whatever and make it work. And all you wind up doing is trying to polish a turd, because what you really should have done is just redraw the darn thing the way it's supposed to be. Okay? So again, we'll worry about connecting the dots here shortly. Like there, that's okay. Okay, this should be cut and pasted. Control C, Control V. There we go. And now, again, we're going to let this start to stretch up. Same thing here. Yeah, probably we should dive a little further here on the, like that. Yeah. And one more iteration of that. And now, obviously, we got a little erasing to do. So, get rid of this. Get rid of this. So, I don't know about anybody else. I mean, I think my methodology may be a little unusual in terms of how I map out action, but I like it. I think it works. Oops. Okay. Zoom in, baby. Look at that. Fix it, Dave. Fix it. This, I feel like I can probably get away with risking chatter. I don't think it's going to be something that's noticeable because her hand's moving. Your attention's going to be on the sword, the hand, blah, blah, blah. Again, just cleaning out some garbage. If I'd approached this a little more intelligently, yeah, there is, Hans. There is. You know, it's a cool feature that in practice I don't actually find that useful personally. So, like the number of use cases are kind of small actually. It's most useful if you're trying to draw a box You know, something really simple like a box where you can just trim off those overhangs in one fell swoop. You know, it's useful, but not very. To me. You know, other people may think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know, I don't know. Okay. Now we're gonna zip in here. Okay. Got that little guy that's sneaking in. I better save my work. Save early, save often, right? I've grown into the habit of first position, finishing position, figuring if mid position works, and then tweens. Yeah, I mean, if you're an animation purist, and you read Richard Williams' book, he's really quite correct in when he talks about walk cycles. That it's actually the passing position. It's the middle position that actually gives all the character to a walk. Usually the steps themselves, the landing positions are pretty pedestrian, but what you do with the character in the tween is what actually makes it fun or silly or heavy or, you know, conveys attitude, blah, 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 blah. So it all matters. It all matters. Okay, let's just zip back here. At this point, I think we are safe to, delete that completely. There's no reason to keep it around. I'm going to save all. I actually should have cleaned my cast first. So I'm going to clean my cast after it's done saving. Trimming all those snippets before would be easier with that tool, I think. Right. It might, but see, I don't think that tool is smart enough to look at this drawing and go, oh, there's an artifact there. There's an you know, it's not gonna clean up artifacts nicely. What it's gonna do is it's gonna find an area where there's definitely a cross like this, and it's gonna nip, like if it was like that, you know, it's gonna nip off the fingertip, which is cool. Like I said, you know, once in a while it's useful. It's just that for me, hardly ever. But that's just my opinion. Other people may disagree fervently. Yeah, see, I would say the rising is too slow. Yep, the rising's too slow. I'm thinking, let me just see here. I mean, it's kind of cool animation, but it's not great storytelling because it doesn't have enough snap. So let me look at my timing here on the... Okay, now maybe we can get away with just taking that frame out, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Oh, it is enough. Okay, that worked. Cool. Cool beans. It probably goes without saying that, you know, adding an eye blink or two would probably help bring it to life, because obviously she's a little mechanical looking at the moment. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with what's going on here. Right. Right. That's all kind of partly a matter of getting the snap going. So now what I'm going to do is, let's turn on the onion skins. Okay, back here. Yeah, since this doesn't move. Boom. That's up there, and it doesn't move. So actually this, Control C, E key to erase, S key, paste that back in, paste it in, and now we get a change. Okay. Turn off the old onion skins. Don't like this little part right here. That should probably, right? We need to get a sense of the folds here. I mean, it is a cartoon, admittedly, but yeah, this is not, I don't like that. That needs to have a little more curvature to it. Keep going. Boom. Boom. Whoops. Okay. Same situation here. S key to do a selection. Grab the selection. Control C. Go to the next frame where nothing changes and just paste that in. Yep, there we go. And okay, so maybe we need a little more indication of this stretch. Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure I did that great. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, S key again, selection. Okay, and this time I'm going to put it in there, but just push it up. That's one thing you can do, and then if I hit Control C again, it's going to be in the same position for the next frame. It turns out I didn't need to use it, but that can be a way to sort of get a little more consistency across the movement. I mean, all in all, I'm kind of feeling like it's working. Okay, looking at this, I think snap implies a little weight transfer from arms to back, which looks correct. Agreed. Eye squint, maybe. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not even thinking about her facial expression. There's obviously a lot you could do to make this scene pop better by giving it a blink or a scowl or something, you know, for sure. It feels like sometimes it feels like what to show is like picking a common animation symbol rather than reanalyzing real reference. Yeah, it just depends. I imagine pantomime is symbolic gestures that people understand. Well, that's true. I have a problem with that scene. Why should it be long? What is the meaning? What are the conclusions? Dude, you're so deep. The relationship that we get from him watching her getting out. Well, the best answer, okay, so Max is asking a question where he's doing a super deep dive on, you know, here you've got an almost an hour-long show, and he's doing a deep dive on something that's taking 3 seconds. Okay, so the best answer to that question is that the only way you could answer it is to put this action in the context of the entire rest of the show that led up to this moment. Out of context, you could think it to death from a storytelling standpoint. You could pick it apart and have all kinds of problems with all kinds of things about it. But it's only the context that gives you a sense of whether you're doing the right thing or not. Right? We're talking about 3 seconds out of an hour. So, what is the context I'm referring to? Here's the context. The context is she's in this tent. She's trapped against her will. There's crap going on. There's a monkey that's sneaking in. The monkey shows her that there's a way out of the tent. The bad guy is right there. There's nothing she can do. She's kind of screwed. The bad guy actually leaves the room, which causes her to go, wow, gee, maybe there's a way to get out of here. So she goes and she looks under the tent. And she notices, yes, there is a way to get out of here. Mel, meanwhile, because he's spying outside of the tent, because he's chasing after the monkey, because the monkey stole his letter. And if he loses the letter, the whole world world's pretty much going to end for Mel. Okay, so he's got to be there, and he's chasing after the monkey, but he knows that there's something going on in there, and he hears the word prince, he hears the voices, he knows that it's the prince in there. If he gets caught, he's going to get his head chopped off. So he's being a little bit careful. The prince comes into the tent, he's talking to the girl who he's pledged to marry, who he also doesn't want to marry, but they're both kind of sort of locked into it because this is a scheme on the part of the bad guy and her mother. Okay, Mel hears all this going on. Mel says, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't get my letter. He hears these two he overhears them talking to each other, and it's a very awkward conversation that doesn't go very well for the prince at all. He basically is a doofus, and Mel responds to that. So now he finally loses his cool with her, leaves the room, and she, as quick as possible, after having that interaction with the prince, knows for sure that she doesn't want to be in this situation. So she finally takes the opportunity, the only one available, by the way, to get the hell out of there. Well, the problem is, Mel's right outside of the tent, okay? And so she is on her way out. He's outside of the tent. He sees the bottom of the tent wiggle, and he knows he's about to get caught. So he rushes up the bluff to get out of the way, and then he looks to peek to see what's going on, and he sees her coming out. Okay. There's your context, Max. Why does he look to see her coming out of the tent? Because he wants to know what the heck's going on, because he still needs to go get his letter from the monkey. Okay? I hope that works for you, because that's a pretty accurate rendering of what the heck's going on here. There's a lot happening really, really, really fast. Okay? And unfortunately, in the world of animation, what we have to do is we have to do that deep dive where we're spending, at this point, an hour and 30 minutes so far on something that's literally going to take 3 seconds of the whole show. But we still want to do it well, right? We want that 3 seconds to be executed well. He might be in a lot of danger. Yes, if he got caught, he would probably be killed. Like, very, very quickly, he's going to die. Okay, so Mel has some motivation here. Tianara has some motivation here. The only freaking wild card in the situation is the damn monkey. Where'd the monkey go? And the answer is, we're not sure at the moment. Now, does that mean we're not going to find out shortly? We are going to find out shortly. But from the vantage point of the characters... Yeah, OBS actually stayed alive through that whole thing. Yeah. So, okay, but I mean, that's what's going on. So, Max, I offer that fairly, admittedly, kind of snarky response to your question because I do approach this from the vantage point of a director who wrote the script, who edits his own movies, who has produced multiple full-length feature films. I'm looking at this from the standpoint of the experience that the audience is going to have watching this show. So the context is never very far from me. One of the most difficult things about the animation process for an animator, and I say this to kind of pat Max on the back because from the standpoint of encouragement, what you're trying to do if you're the animator and you're not doing what I do where you wrote the thing, you know the story, blah, blah, blah. One of the real dangers is here you've got a 3-second shot out of an hour-long show. And you start getting creative ideas. You're like, well, she could do this. She could move around this way. She could look around. We could show her thinking. There's all these things that come to you, and what's going to happen is that you, as the animator, are going to get spanked. Your director is going to come to you and go, Max, that's a really cool thing. That's an idea that you have there. But the problem is that in the context of the show and the story we're trying to tell right now, everything you just spent 3 days animating is going to get cut out of the show. Seriously, believe me, that is exactly what would happen. I have had, my most successful film, I've said it over and over here, guys, but I know what I'm talking about. I've made a movie that made $1 million. Okay, I really did. And I wrote it, and I shot it. I ran the camera, I edited it, I directed it, I wrote all the music. I know about making films. Well, guess what? There's entire scenes that were just cut out of that show that I thought were great scenes. Really cool scenes. I chopped them. You know why? Because they slowed down the movie. They made the pace of the show start to break down. How do you maintain cognizance of that pacing when you're the guy doing the animation of the 3-second scene? The best answer I can give you is you can't. Okay, so if you're working for me, my advice would be if you want to get involved at the time when we're writing the script or doing the storyboard, great. I'd love to hear your ideas. But make no mistake, once we've committed to that script and that storyboard, you as the animator, your obligation is to allow yourself to be constrained to a degree creatively to the requirements of the shot you're working on. Otherwise, you're going to wind up doing tons of work that has to get cut out. Once in a while, you're going to hit a home run. Once in a while, you're going to have a great idea, and we're going to go, well, you know what? Let's put that in the show. That actually happened today, didn't it? Because when I started this scene, I was not going to have her throw the sword out like that. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to do something completely different. So Maria actually threw something out there that was helpful. But it was helpful within the context that did not in any way, shape, or form violate the requirements of this little tiny 3-second shot. It actually made the job a little bit easier. It made the storytelling probably no better or worse, and it did not interrupt the flow and the pacing. So for me, okay, great, we can go with that idea. I've had many people poke out ideas here in the chat that I've had to reject because I say, you know, and I'm giving you this lecture so you understand that as a guy that wants to do the animation, there's this whole backdrop behind what you're doing that usually in most cases involves a lot of other people who and sometimes a lot of money. A lot of money that has committed to that concept or that show or that script or that cast. And once the people that are paying the bills have made that commitment, they don't want the person who's playing the role that I'm playing today, which I'm playing the role of the animator. Even though I am the director, I'm the writer, I'm still the animator today. So when I put this hat on, I'm putting on the hat that I'm not going to get too creative with my little 3 seconds here. Because believe me, every second of this show, new ideas pop into my head all the time. You can't run with them. Now, if you want to go have a dialogue with the director and say, hey, by the way, that scene where our main character walks out of the room, I was just thinking, when he goes to walk out of the room, what if a rocket came down through the tent, blew it up, and caused this whole end of the world scenario, and a bunch of zombies went and started to attack our characters. Okay? If you came up with that idea, what would happen is you'd be told, you need to go back and animate your shot, right? So I wanted to answer Max's comment very accurately because the thing is, this stuff takes a lot of work, and what happens is there's a time to really wrestle with character relationships and story and plot. There's a time for that. And I'm talking to you as a guy that's written and directed 8 movies. And I've done stuff that's very bad, and I've done stuff that's very good. Okay? And learned a lot along the way. And what happens is you got to understand that these things go in steps. And usually once you're at the point of what we're doing here today, we're way past the idea of thinking about character relationships, actually. What we do want to do is we don't want to introduce something in the animation that takes away from or violates the direction we're going in terms of the story we're telling about those character relationships. But basically, they've kind of already been decided. There's a very deep web of intrigue behind this show and how these characters are coming together, why they're coming together, and how they actually end up together. Because as you can see here, there's this whole windy path of action wherein I don't mind telling you guys that she dons a disguise, and they do not like each other at all at first. And then as we reach the end of episode 2, they are in a situation where their best available option is to team up, kind of against their own will, and they make the command decision to do so. And now we've actually launched into the first chapter, which is really 2 episodes, of a 12-episode arc, you know? Right, exactly, Max. You don't. And I get that. And how could you? You know, how could you? So it's perfectly understandable. So the main thing I'm trying to accomplish here with what I'm saying is to realize that I limit myself. I very much constrain myself to the requirements of the scene and the shot and the script that I'm working with, in order to just keep moving forward and tell the story I'm trying to tell. Because it's a cool story. I mean, it's a very cool story. I really like it. My distributor is very enthused about it. As I mentioned earlier, kind of there is a streaming platform. It's not Netflix, but there is a streaming platform that, you know, is looking at it. You know, I'm not sure how I want to do this. I need to kind of, okay, there's a little bit of a wackiness going on here with the undo. This is where probably having the pencil test would have been a little bit helpful, but I'm just going to pause on that a little bit. And, okay, so yeah, this one live stream is a narrow window over several live streams. We get to know more. Yeah, it's, Hans, I like Hans's comments too, because I totally, trust me, you guys, I get the vantage point that you guys are coming from. I mean, I can kind of read through your characters to understand what you guys are thinking about what we're doing here, and it's all good, believe me. Your point of no return, I think that you're referring to that, I think, from the standpoint of the story structure. You know, where you have a key turning point. You know, and usually, you know, in typical 3-act structure, you can break it down in different ways. But normally, what you have is you establish your characters, you introduce a problem, you're going to introduce a complication. The complication results in jeopardy or consequences. And then in the process of what often happens, one characteristic I like in the 7-act structure paradigm is the idea that the main character has a change of direction, where the thing they've been chasing through most of the story, they realize is actually the wrong goal, and they tend to discover the bigger goal. So those are all components that certainly factor into the storytelling here. Yeah, see you later, Maria. Thank you, Maria. I'm glad you think so, because I always think, you know, why would anybody be interested in anything I have to say, right? You know, I'm just doing my thing. I'm just doing what I do. Okay, so now we got to do the same thing we've been doing over and over here, which is go Control C. I've had it happen. I direct this to Max. I have had this happen, in all seriousness, where I've been on a set and you're dealing with an actor who typically is a less experienced actor, who is a creative person, like many of the people that are tuning in here, that have a story they want to tell. And what can happen is, especially if they're not experienced and they don't understand the role that they have in the, I don't want to say hierarchy because it makes it sound like a real dictatorship, but here's what happens on a movie set when you have an actor that all of a sudden has a bunch of ideas. See, ideas that have to do with their performance in the scene, how they interpret the character and execute, that's all wonderful. That's what they're there to do. That's what I'm paying them to do, is to bring their creativity to the character. But when that actor is a less experienced actor and they start asking questions about the story that maybe they don't that they don't understand what all's going on, they may be coming into it a little bit blind, it can really become expensive. Because now all of a sudden you're wasting time on a movie set with half a dozen people standing around or more that are all being paid, trying to convince this actor that what's in the script that they're there to do is in fact what they should do. It hasn't happened very often because most of the actors I've worked with are experienced and they're professional, and actors, as we've discussed here before, are very, very eager to please their director typically. You know, they very much want to figure out what your vision is and how they can help you achieve it. But I have had that happen where less experienced people, it's just like, I wish I could give you an example I can think of, but it's like a situation where somebody will ask a question where it's so outside of the wheelhouse of what they should even be thinking about, you know, because they should be thinking about their performance, what they're there to do. And I've seen it happen. This was early in my filmmaking career where, and the whole thing slows down. Everything grinds to a halt. Everything quits moving forward, and it can become contentious. I remember one specific situation like that, and it kind of wrecked the day for everybody, actually, is what happened. I ain't gonna lie to you. So, and I'm not suggesting that you're doing that, because you're not doing that. I'm just trying to give you some perspective from the standpoint of somebody who's kind of, I've played all of these roles. I've worn all of these hats. It's what makes me unusual as a filmmaker, is the fact that I do literally do it all. Most directors don't, you know. I've written all my own screenplays. And we'll just keep it loose, keep it loose, keep it loose. I think this is gonna work. So, you know, and I get kind of passionate about it, right? You know, Mr. Passion, because the honest truth is that in my life as a creator, you know, I mean, I've had people, even people in Hollywood, you know, having worked with on my last film, I hired Sean Young, who, you know, people know her from the Ace Ventura movie or from Blade Runner. She was the babe, the babe in Blade Runner, the replicant, Rachel. You know, so when I hired her, you know, for her it was a really unique experience because she had never been, she had worked on lower budget films, but she had never been in a situation that was as lean and streamlined as what I did. And she had a great time, and we had a lot of fun. But, you know, she even told me, she said, geez, even in Hollywood, you don't get very many people that do what you do, that literally do it all, you know, and can. It's pretty unusual. You know, for what that's worth, you know, it's probably not worth much. But I do this stuff because it's fun. You know, basically, I do it because I like to. Okay, so we have a little problem here, don't we? Don't we, people? Yeah, we've got a problem here. And it's a real problem because there's some crap there on her hand that we need to get rid of. Okay, so now, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually connect these dots like this. Whoops, that was not quite right. Ba-da-bump-ba-da-bump. Is this conversation heading toward a discussion about auteur, if that's the correct term? Well, I don't know. I mean, I would certainly, yeah, I mean, I would definitely fall in that category, I'm sure. Auteur or polymath, you know. So, you know, the word auteur is a loaded term because for some people that implies the plight of creative people, and obviously, you know, Tom is I don't know how much animation you do, but certainly as a programmer, that's super creative too. And you can relate from the standpoint of software development, probably, I would guess, in that, you know, and we're back to the waterfall method versus, I forget what the other term is, but you know, once the client is paying and the specs of the project have been determined, there's a point where what you have to do is you have to constrain yourself to the goal and try to execute in the manner that I would call ready, fire, aim, which is that you basically say, let's dive in and do the best we can with this and see what goes wrong. And there's always alternative ideas. You know, there's an infinite number of directions you could go. The problem is that you can't switch to a completely different direction. The ridiculous example I gave is probably a good example, you know, of taking a show like this that's obviously happens in the ancient past and blah blah blah, and all of a sudden you introduce a rocket and a bunch of zombies. You really probably don't want to do that, right? And sometimes you'll get in the scenario I described that happened on a film set, that's pretty much what happened. Is, you know, you had a less experienced actor who, the reason it happened actually is because he was an old friend of mine, and so he didn't really again, I hate to use this terminology because it sounds so bastardly, but he really didn't respect the role I had to play that day and the role that he had to play that day. So he kind of basically stepped outside of his boundaries to a point. So it's like, here we are trying to get a job done, and I think you guys get what I'm trying to say. It was a difficult situation. It made the whole day take 5 times longer than it should have, and was not very fun for anyone. It wasn't fun for anyone. Basically ruined it for everybody, you know. And I suppose my prevailing point here was that I deliberately restrict myself to the job I have to do at the time. So I'm in a very different place mentally when I'm writing a script, when I'm doing the screenplay. So totally different, you know, just headspace. Totally different headspace. This, I think, should probably be like that. A person or persons with consistent vision of the desired outcome is key to successful expected results. Documents, contracts, agreements are subject to interpretation. There is that issue. Yep. And I mean, the number of cases are legion where you have somebody who's involved in a highly creative or complex project where they have to bow out because they're just not on board with the the creator's vision. And there's really nothing wrong with that. There's no reason they should feel compelled to stick around if they don't believe in it. And that can certainly happen. I mean, somebody look, we need to go through here with our cosmic leak detector. This thing with the tent is kind of vexing me a little bit. So I'm sure I probably ticked off at least someone today. No, you wind up having discussions all along the way. All along the way you're trying to, it's an iterative process of figuring out are we accomplishing, what are our metrics, how do we know, how do we know when we failed or when we're failing. With a product, obviously it's going to probably be sales of the product. With a show or a movie, gosh, you can have something that is creatively super successful that's commercially a complete failure. I mean, everybody knows there's lots of examples of that. I'm not sure what to do or think about this. We've got, she's showing she's filled, but yet we're continuing to show that the tent canvas won't fill. Is it because of this? Maybe. Nope. See, that's not it. This is a bit of a puzzle. Maybe it's because this is all open out here and it's technically not a closed shape. I'm just not sure about that one. Okay, so let's go back here and we'll kind of ignore it on the tent for now. Okay. Yep. All right. Are we going to have more leaks? I think we are. I think we've got a problem here. I'm sorry, not more leaks. That's not what I meant. I meant chatter. Yeah. I've got to slow down here. Speaking of kind of evaluating progress along the way, I'm seeing a problem I need to address. Some quality control issues. And this requires me to focus in very narrowly on one thing and ignore the rest for the moment. Okay, so S key, Control C, next frame, erase, paste it in. There we go. Probably can paste that in again. Control V. That probably worked okay. Not convinced this is really what would happen. I think this is wrong. I'm thinking that would... Yeah, right. Limited set of decision makers. Yeah, and my dramatic recap of the plot was just to show Max that, you can see this is very, very carefully thought through. Everything that's happening is, it's going to be mysterious to some of the people that are watching it, in the limited scope of this shot. But, oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of creative work going back over a year, behind this little tiny piece that we're working on today. Then I think that this, yeah, that's pretty ugly. Right there. Okay, so here's what we have. I'm sorry, I want to hit the S key. I'm going to grab that, Control C, go here. I want to hit erase here. Oops, I said erase, not selection tool. All right, now hit the selection tool and paste that back in. Same thing here. I just don't want to have chatter. It's really easy to introduce chatter. We're okay now. I think we're okay now. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Yeah, in fact, if anything, if I was going to criticize this scene or this shot, my number one criticism by far would be that it actually is taking too long. It's might be an example of a shot that when I put it in the edit, I'm going to try it. I'm going to render this out right now. And I'm going to put it in the show. And I think what we're going to find is that we're not going to want this to run at 8 frames per second. I think we're going to find we're going to want it to be faster. Now, I need to do something. I've got to create another scene in OBS so that I can create a source, which is going to be display capture of long as it's not looping, it'll go. Well, yeah, I mean, it does depend. I mean, it depends on the situation for sure. Yeah, so let's go over here to Vegas. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and stick this in. This is 553, so what we're going to do is I want to cut this into the show and see what we've got. So scene 553. Yeah. The word I use is chatter with a C, like chatter, and that's just like stuff that's just vibrating on the screen, you know, that doesn't have any business moving, basically. Okay, so I'm gonna take this and we'll change its properties. So now again, like this is what I'm thinking here. I'm gonna get rid of that. My suspicion is this shot's gonna take too long. Let's take a look. He glances up, and then he sneaks back down. Now, if we took this shot and made it half the length, let's just see what happens if we make it half the length. Yeah, see? I could see maybe stretching it a little more, but basically what we have here is a shot that really, that's all we need to see. I mean, so yeah, this is actually playing not at 8 frames per second, but 1.499, 1.5, so that means it's actually playing at 12 frames a second. So yeah, there you go. Hey Max, that's why I asked, why is it 3 seconds? Yeah, I think if anything, it's too long. And you know, if you do something like this and it is long, then of course it's kind of, you know, it's tempting to wonder if maybe you're, you know, not doing enough to make that 3 seconds as impactful as it can be. I mean, these are all really valid questions to ask. They really are. The answer is, again, one of those kind of 80-20 rule things, which is, I expected his reaction on her to be excited by her beauty or scared or something. Okay, that's fair. Okay, so let me answer that for you. The idea of him being, what you're talking about happened in episode 1, right? That it happened weeks ago in terms of the story. When he first saw her in episode 1, he was impressed with her. Like, wow, she's cute, is pretty much what it was. We're way past that. So here, he's not thinking about her. at all. He's just trying to avoid getting caught. And he doesn't know her. He knows who she is, but he doesn't know her. They've never spoken or anything like that. And so what I'm thinking is he goes like this, and probably this whole thing stretches out too long. Okay, so this is, again, we need to edit this down a bit, more like that. So he's going to pop out, and then it cuts to her. And then in all likelihood, again, I mentioned this earlier, but what's going to happen is something like this. We're going to take this. I'm going to reverse this. And then run this really fast. So what's going to happen story-wise is going to be like that. Except it's going to be even faster. And the camera's not going to pan. So the camera pans kind of screws it up so it doesn't really work. But he's going to duck right back down. So he's peeking. There she is. Oop, I better hide. That's all that's happening here. That's it. Because once he's out of sight, what matters is what she's doing, which is she's taking inventory of her situation, and then she's looking around. You can see there on her face she's pretty intense. And then she sees the bluff because it is the only avenue of escape. So what are you going to do? Right? So she takes off up the bluff. See, there's an example of where I drew something and then I made a note, this shot is not needed. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I could take or leave the squint, honestly. The squint, you know, if it's there, it would be fine. And if it's not there, it wouldn't be a tragedy. You know, but what actually happens is I see him being more wide-eyed. You know, as he's looking up to say, you know, is she coming? What's going on down there? And then poof, her face literally just pops right up in front of him. The whole point is to build to this shot, actually. That's the whole point is to build to this moment when, sorry, I got to make a little change here on my, okay. So the whole point is to build to this moment where he's like, ah! And then she sticks a knife in his face and says, and he's like, wait, watch where you're pointing that thing. Who are you? She says. Me? I'm nobody. He just wants her to get out of there so that he can go get that letter back. Remember? Because that's his problem, is the letter. She looks at him, she grimaces, and you did not see me. Hey, yeah, no problem. Hey, you know, be on your way or whatever. I don't know what his line of dialogue is, but, right? So he's like, yeah, hey, no problem. And his face transitions, boop, from this to this. You know, so you can tell he's intimidated, but, and then poof, she just zips past him and is gone and leaves him there kind of glad she's out of there. And then he remembers what he's supposed to be doing. Well, yeah, and surprised to see her happens right here. You know, there's a big kind of panic moment. So, yeah, this is all the stuff that's going on here. This shot is relatively, you know, a pretty small piece of the whole storytelling puzzle that's going on here. But I will say, you know, I feel like I like the way it came out. My normal practice would be to put the blanks on another layer, just put them on another level and use them to sort of cover the eyes. I don't think... I was looking at your comment, Max, where you said... Was it Max? I think it was Max. You placed a scared face and then a blink. Those two don't go together. Oh, so you're talking... I know what you're talking about, I think. You're talking about way back here. Are you talking about this? I think I'm gonna veto you on that one. I actually liked the way the expression captured where he's at mentally, because what he's dealing with here is, well, first of all, he hasn't seen her yet. Okay, all he's seen is there's a hand. There's somebody's coming out. He doesn't know who it is, but he knows somebody is. And remember, just a little while ago, he saw some activity outside of the tent moving that he thought was the monkey. He wasn't sure, right? But So here it's sort of incredulity, like, oh crap, what do I do now? Is what's supposed to be going on there. So it's like curious. Whoa, that's not good. Now what am I supposed to do? And he decides this is what he's going to do. Yeah, get me out of here. You know, so that's what happened. Anyway, the question now becomes, my friends, are we going to color this thing or not? Let me do one thing. Let me find out what's really going on here with this stupid tent fabric. I'm going to hit the F key. Yep, it's going to fill. Okay, so that's good news. That's good news. Okay, so we do have a leak there, but yeah, darn it. So that means we're probably going to have leaks all over the place. Yep. Shoot, I'm not really sure. Because it's not filling in her, so I'm definitely a little bit bumming here that the... I just don't know if it's this. I'm going to assume it's this. I'm going to assume it's leaking at these edges here. Because that's really annoying. A leak like that. Okay, let's find out. Sorry. Okay, I think that was the problem. I think that was the problem, friends. Yep, that was the problem. Yay, we found the problem. Whoops. Let's go back here and undo. We'll go back and address that shortly. So we've got a problem there. And I think that's really going to be mostly the extent of our leak issues on this scene, hopefully. Here's hoping. Don't see any other leakage going on. Yep, there we go. We got it. So that's good. That's good. That's not good. B key. Maybe tighten that up. And get that. Yep, we got it. Okay, cool. So now we're not going to be having to deal with a bunch more leaks. Okay, guys. Boy. It's going to require all my stamina to stick with this. Because I'm really pretty much ready to quit. It's been almost 2.5 hours. Alright. I'm going to put my show in a loop here over the storyboard and take a couple-minute break. So this is going, and I'm going to be back in a few minutes to continue. I think we're going to get the coloring done and deal with some shadows and blah 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 blah. Yeah, a break from Dave's constant ranting. One thing's for sure. Animation's a lot of work. Okay, so now let's do this the cheating way. Let's go boom, 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 boom. Just add a bunch of colors and let's wing it a bit. Okay, let's go a flesh tone that tends to gravitate slightly towards the olive end of the spectrum. We need a kind of a hair color. Her headdress, as I recall, is kind of pinkish. And frankly, this is what I said at the beginning of the stream today, is about the Toonz raster levels, is about being able to change the color after the fact. This color needs to be probably a little bit more muted. We do have a situation where her color scheme is fighting a bit, as you can see here, with the color of the tent, unfortunately. Probably not the greatest decision I've ever made. But the thing is, we can always pull in a palette from the earlier TNR shots and correct all these colors whenever we want. Okay, so for now I'm just gonna, even though her eyes are gonna be not colored properly, for our purposes right now, this is gonna get the color blocked in, and then we'll go in and add a slightly off white color for the whites of her eyes. But okay, that takes care of that. In fact, if you're into features, why don't we try frame range and see what happens. We're going to click frame range, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here, and as you can see, Tahoma did a pretty good job of coloring all of the in-between frames. Boop. Up there, it failed. Darn it. That's why I don't use frame range that often, because it actually fails kind of frequently. If you just do it a couple frames at a time, it tends to work okay. Yeah, okay, so the headdress. Now the headdress is actually darker, so I kind of had that backwards. Let's see if we can get away with it this time. Yep, that worked. Frame range worked there. This is a little more dangerous because things are moving a lot. So we'll try it and see what happens. There's the first point. Here's the next one. Let's just see what happens. Yep, see there, it botched again. So if you're really having, you're doing an anime thing where you've got a bunch of drawings that actually are all kind of the same position, they don't move too much, then the frame range option can work pretty well. It looks like we have a leak there, unfortunately, so we'll have to come back and fix that here shortly. Where's our leak? Ah, there's our leak. Now I'll just take the actual pink color and fill that in, and boop, there we go. Got that fixed. Got that. So this color is actually the main garment. Let's go back to the beginning and see if we got any more leaks. The way I did this, it wouldn't surprise me if, or I should say it doesn't surprise me when a certain number of leaks appear. Like there we go again. It's the thing I actually enjoy the least in the animation process is doing the coloring. I like doing the ink work, but the coloring with discovering leaks is always prone to tedium to a degree. So now we got to take this. Let's get the hands. Ah, there's a leak right there. Fill tool. And Tahoma does have a gap closer, so, and I am not really using it right now, so spank me for that. I've got it set to ignore gaps. you can see that the fills, I mean, there's some stuff that's not getting filled, obviously, and we're going to have to lasso that and clean that up. So that's where you take your fill tool and you put it in lasso mode and just go through there, and you can see there's an artifact right there that really needs to be cleaned up. Sometimes I clean them up, sometimes I don't. It depends on if things are moving a lot. If things are moving a lot, nobody's ever going to notice that artifact, so I don't necessarily worry about it. Hit the G key to sample that color, and then the fill tool again so that I can lasso this area. And here, I guess I would say that should probably be the tent color. Let's go up here and start looking for gaps that have snuck through, or not gaps, but just little areas that haven't gotten filled properly. If I was using the gap closer, these would be even worse, actually. So there's a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off, basically. You know, this needs to be manually filled like that, and just lasso these areas. Well, it doesn't take very long. You know, it's not that bad, but it definitely is my least favored part of the process. And yes, indeed, I'm going to have to go through here and get her eyes colored. I'm going to have to zoom in and be a little more careful, but just to keep it, to get it filled cleanly to begin with and then amend it from there is not a horrible way to work, especially with a wide-ish shot like this where you're not going to really see the details in her face that clearly. This is going to be her Bindu. I think that's what it's called. I think it was Maria that... No, it was actually Darren. It was Darren that told me it was called a Bindu. I didn't even know what this thing was called that she has on her forehead. Okay, and that's a little saturated for my taste, so I'm just going to roll back the saturation a bit. And now, we're going to need a few more colors. We're going to need a sword blade. Sword blade. What color was that hilt T thing? Right there. Okay, so it's basically gold trim and then a charcoal gray handle. So we're going to need that goldish color. Something like that. And then we do see the hilt there towards the end of the shot. So here we're going to obviously have a problem. There's more than one way to do it. You could fill the whole thing with the blade color and then take the V key, which is the Smart Raster paint tool, and just kind of manually paint it. So I'm going to zip in here. The problem is that if you manually paint it, and this is true for Tahoma or OpenToonz, it's not going to see this gold line as a barrier. Meaning that if you then go to fill, you know, in regular or normal mode, probably what's about to happen is that gold will get overpainted, say, like that. So that to me is something that probably should be fixed in Tahoma. Now if I draw the line across it like this and then fill this area, then it respects it. It respects that line. So probably a little confusing. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the V key, the Smart Raster paint tool. Now we're again yeah, we're at risk here of creating that chatter I was talking about. So if I'm very careful, it'll be fine, and if it chatters a little bit, it won't matter, because this is not what you're going to be looking at. So why don't we go ahead and do it the slobbish way, just to make the point and see if it winds up being something that is visually egregious or not. I suspect it won't be, but it might turn out to be. So, and the other problem we have here is that these little corners are so tight that there's just no way that the fill tool is gonna, whoops, do a good job. So you kind of have to do a certain amount of manual painting. I could imagine, you know, somebody looking at what I'm doing here and not liking the fact that it seems a little sloppy. And it is a little sloppy. The question for me is always, does it matter? Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. It usually has to do with how much things are moving in your scene. Here, yeah, we can do it that way. Okay, now here we're going to be back to the gold. So a good example would be the detail, the level of detail on this sword hilt. You know, that looks pretty crappy. You say, well, yeah, but this is what we're actually going to see on the screen. When I go back and look at, you know, actual size would be this. And especially what you find is once you add some shadowing to like punch up the shapes a bit, all of a sudden you just don't notice. You know, if this was larger on the screen, like in, well, like here, the level of detail probably should be stronger. And frankly, if you were going to criticize this shot, I would agree with you. No question. This is a shot that I'm going to be going back into and punching up the detail, and it's not where it needs to be. Not at all. So, J Studios asks the question I've been asked many times: why do I use Tahoma? And I did say it at the beginning of this live stream. To me, Tahoma and OpenToonz are the same program. The differences between them are minimal. The reason I use Tahoma is because Tahoma makes it possible to cut and paste using the Windows clipboard. So I can create imagery in Krita or, you know, once in a great while, other programs that can then be just cut and pasted into Tahoma. And you can't do that with OpenToonz. So that's really the only reason I don't use OpenToonz. I mean, I have OpenToonz on my system, but there's just been no reason to use it because they're, you know, the OpenToonz 1.5 just got released. The latest version of Tahoma, you know, it's pretty much parity as far as features go. You know, it literally is the same program. I mean, I think it's fair to say that the devs are borrowing the best bug fixes and additions. Tom might be able to weigh in on that and tell me if I'm wrong, but you know, sort of folding the best stuff that's being done winds up getting into both programs. It's probably a little slower to get into OpenToonz, I would guess, than Tahoma, but so mainly I rarely use OpenToonz because there's no reason to, because there's nothing going on in OpenToonz that I don't have in Tahoma, since they are basically the same program. For those who don't know, Tahoma2D is just it's what's called a fork of OpenToonz. So it's the same program with just a few changes. Like the stop motion, you know, the stop motion capability where it'll detect your webcam or your camera and let you do stop motion animation. That's something that, you know, Jeremy Bullock kind of baked into Tahoma. That was a new thing that I'm pretty sure was not present in OpenToonz. So now I'm gonna create this green color so that we can meticulously go through with the Smart Raster Brush tool and just color her eyes. She's so small, I mean, her eyes obviously are so small in the shot that there's no reason to worry about like specular highlighting here. And as I mentioned earlier, I will be adding some eye blinks, but I'll just put those on a separate layer. Just, you know, they'll just cover up the eyes so you can just get a quick blink going on. Alright, I think we're almost to the point where we can look at shadows. Let's rewind and see what we have. Yeah, this is a definite tricky shot. Hitting the N key so we see it at actual size. Yep, there we go. She's moving, she's rocking. Okay. So now what do? Well, I want to do some shadows, so I'm going to just do a different level. I'm going to create a vector level. This is my normal practice, is to use vectors, at least in in Tahoma. I use vectors for shadows. The feature you're seeing right here, I believe, was in Tahoma first, and I think it's in OpenToonz as well. But the idea is that you can create a vector level, and then you can turn on auto close, auto group, auto fill, and then that gives you the ability to do what I'm doing right here, which is just draw a shape like this. And I actually did it wrong. I need to redo it, and it just fills it in for you. Now, when I was doing more animation with Krita, I would use the freehand path tool to do the same thing. Okay, so now what we can do is two steps. One is turn the shadow opacity down to where we want it to be, which is normally about 12, 13, something like that. And in this case, I might make them slightly harsher. Okay, and then you want to go into your scene settings and make sure this is checked, so that the transparency that you're applying to the level itself actually makes it into the render. So when I put this in render mode, that's what we're going to see. Okay? So, c'est bon. Alright, so you can do in between vector lines. Yeah, that's true. I almost never do. You can, yeah, so Brazilian Dutchie asks a good question, and Tom answered it. The auto in-betweening, like, you know, like you might be familiar with in the Blender grease pencil, where you hit Control-Shift-E and it actually will interpolate between two shapes. You can do that with these vector levels in Tahoma. The standard smart raster levels and raster levels, which are basically just pixel-based art, if you will, there's no auto in-betweening with them. But the vector levels do let you do that. So I have auto in-betweening. I mean, at the risk of, you know, having a strong opinion, I almost never find it useful, frankly. I mean, it's faster just to redraw something, you know, do the tweening. But there are situations. There are situations where it can be useful for sure. Yeah, it just doesn't come up very often in my work. So okay, and now that I'm just kind of thinking about it, I'm gonna go back here and see if I can fine-tune her flesh tone a little bit. That looks a little better. Tiny bit more saturation I think would be good. And as I did mention, her skin is pushing toward olive, so she's Greek basically. You could think of her as being Greek, probably, you know, ethnically. So And of course you can get into things like masking for, let me check something here. Okay, so what you can see here is that in the quick preview, as different layers of semi-transparent shadows stack up on each other, the opacity builds up because it is so transparent. But in the render, that won't be the case. It's just going to be a flat single shape of color. So the shadows on this shot are a little trickier than some because there's a lot of pieces where the shadows really won't change, and then there's a lot of pieces where they will. So I've got to be kind of judicious here about whether I'm... Tahoma has blown up twice in the last few days when I was doing exactly what I was about to do a moment ago, which is to just click and start drawing in an empty frame and have Tahoma automatically create a new keyframe. And it only happens with vector levels. But what's happened a couple times I've tested it is that it has a proclivity to blow up when you do what I'm doing. So let me let it save. So I've saved my work, and then let's see if it blows up. I have a feeling it might, though. Well, yes. Okay, so to close up Tom's comment, yeah, anything that involves animation tools or the plastic tool, yes, there's interpolated keyframes all over the place. And look at what just happened. Tahoma blew up. So now it looks to me like it blew up while saving, so that's extremely concerning. So on the level strip, on the level strip, you can have a start frame and an end frame, and yeah, there's a way to go ahead and create interpolated keyframes. Generally, probably the big reason I don't use interpolated keyframes is because, let's see what we have here. Okay, we're okay. The reason I don't use interpolated keyframes is because in most situations where that would make sense, I'm probably using the animation tools. So if I animate this frame and then down here move it, then yes, it interpolates between them. But I was kind of answering your question from the standpoint of just interpolating between shapes, in a drawing. So again, right now I would expect Tahoma to blow up. And it didn't this time. So, your mileage may vary. It blew up a moment ago. Auto-creating drawings on vector levels is something that over the last week I've noticed makes Tahoma want to crash. And so now if you guys hear a loud beeping sound, that's Zuko, the African gray parrot. Zuko, who are you talking to, handsome man? Zuko is making his presence known, it would appear. I think maybe he's getting a little bored over there. Well, if you were a parrot, how would you feel if no one was paying attention to you? I'm just going to go ahead and shadow that all up. Oh yeah, and then this. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to save in between every shadow frame because I really don't want to lose my work. Okay, Dave, you don't have anything competing running in the background, do you? Like an antivirus disk scan running or update or such? No, it is the Windows Defender. Let me look at the task manager and kind of see what we've got going on here. Yeah, I mean we've got the anti-malware service executable, but its CPU usage is 0. Disk activity is 0. Total CPU activity is 8%, and frankly the biggest offender in terms of CPU outside of OBS Studio is actually the Brave browser, which is a browser built on Chromium. Good morning, Nutgut. Nutgut, I mean. Yeah, I know it. I know it. It buffered. I saw that. So, anyway, you know, and Tahoma tends to be really, really slow at saving too. So once you save, if you click, you're typically going to get you know, kind of a wait and see. So the auto frame creation seems to be working pretty well today. Oh my, one never knows. You just never know what you're going to get. So we'll just keep toggling between these and here. I think I was going to mention earlier and never did that you can use matting. There's actually a number of different ways you could make it so that these shadows get locked to the character. I'm not doing that this time. I'm just drawing my shadows carefully so that I don't go outside the lines, basically. But if you wanted to mat your shadows to the character, you certainly can do that in multiple ways. Should I save my work again? I think I should. Just save early, save often is my maxim. Also known as don't be stupid. I've been stupid too many times and regretted it. Zuko, you are going bananas over there. What's your deal, buddy? What, are you hungry or something? Zuko. Such a silly boy. African gray parrots are the smartest birds in the world. Although that is a matter of opinion, some people think that crows are actually smarter. But it is broadly the consensus that between the two of them, they are the smartest birds. Alright, I'm going to hit the D key and duplicate that just because I can. Okay, and as you can see, that creates a bit of a problem here, and the best solution is to just erase that and fix the stuff that, you know, has changed. So again, here I'm going to do the same thing again, hit the D key, which creates a duplicate. If I hit the D key here, now this creates an interesting situation, because now what I would want to do is grab these shadows and actually just drag them a little bit. And unfortunately, it doesn't really dynamically show the shadows move. It just shows the outline, so it's kind of hard to get them positioned exactly right. As you can see, once again, it creates a problem there that we need to erase and fix. So, but arguably that is quicker than redrawing the whole thing, and again, potentially introducing some chatter. So I think here I'll do it again just because why not? I'm feeling frisky. Let's go ahead and try to reuse our work if we can. Ba-doink. Not bad, not bad. Just erase the stuff that's garbage. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. And then repaint to taste. Repaint to taste. Yes, repaint to taste. Okay, this one right here is going to be a little problem. Unfortunately, we're going to have to redo that one. So let's just kind of go like that. And then we'll loop that whole area in like so. And as you can see, the shadow will flatten out quite nicely when it is rendered. Okay. Here, we're going to do the same thing again, basically. Since she is really moving kind of quick, we'll just block that whole thing in. Block in the shadows on her hair. And then get this kind of covered as well. Little indication there. And we're almost done with the shadows. Better save our work. Okay, I'm going to look here. Where's the autofill in OpenToonz? I'll show you here in a half a second. I mean, Tom did a good job of describing it, but okay. So let me show you. Here's what you do. If you want to create tweening, auto tweening, this is what you would do. Let's say we're going to create a vector level. Boom. Okay, we're going to turn off this stuff that I've been using, the autofill and all that. Okay, so I'm going to create a shape here that's a circle. Okay, and now I'm going to hopefully not blow up Toonz, but I'm going to, oh wait, I'm sorry. What I would do is make a duplicate. Okay, now I'm going to take this shape and maybe stretch it out and move it over yonder. Okay, now if I, let's see, we hit insert. If I insert these three extra drawings and then I grab the group, you can see there's an indication here of the in-betweens, and we're going to do in linear interpolation, and there it is. So now we have automagic interpolation, just like as I said, it's the same as the way it works in the Blender grease pencil. The obvious shortcoming would be that you have to have shapes that, you know, the ones downstream are derived from the ones upstream. If you had a bunch of new strokes that were not present in the initial drawing, it's not going to know what to do with them, and you're going to wind up with garbage. So if you've used less capable auto interpolation in other software, you would probably agree with me that this is pretty rudimentary, but for some things it's useful, you know. But that's how you do it. It's pretty quick and easy to do. So I'm going to get rid of all unused levels. I'm going to do that one more time. Panels, scene cast, get rid of unused levels. There are no unused levels. Okay, cool. Okay, so right. The way Tom's describing it. You know, for me, being that this is kind of, you know, it's kind of anime style, it's kind of based on drawings, not on just manipulating shapes. Because of that, there are very, very, very few use cases where auto in-betweening has any utility for me at all. It just is what it is. So, but we're almost done here with the shadows. So that would be good news. Good news. Very good news. Or as Professor Farnsworth would say, good news, everyone. Good old Professor Farnsworth. Love Professor Farnsworth. Love Professor Farnsworth, and I love Zeb Brannigan, too. I love all the characters from Futurama. I really, really do. Okay, so there we go. And we'll just save our work and re-render multi-arc since it continues at the last point clicked. Yep, multi-arc's pretty cool. Boy, that was fast. Let's jump over to Vegas and see what the heck just happened. Okay, we got a little bit of a hokey edit there. Okay. So as you can see, she's moving a little quicker here. Oh yeah, the interpolation. No, disable resample. I'm maybe going to slow this down just a skosh. Okay, and remember when I mentioned chatter? You see it right there. Look at that. Okay, see? Because, let's put it on the big screen, folks. Because of that right there is the danger. That is the danger. The way I'm working is you kind of miss that. So that right there is like egregious chatter. Yeah, I mean, you kind of almost get away with it, but I don't think so. So what we need to do is, I would say, let's do the old onion skin thing. So I'm going to go here and fix it up this way. So we hit the B key, and that lets me trace this shape right here so that we're not going to have that chatter. And I suspect that did the trick. Oh man, and then it disappears. Oh geez. Okay, sorry guys. How embarrassing. How very, very embarrassing. Yep, same thing again here. Same situation here. Not acceptable, people. Not acceptable. Thank goodness for onion skins. I'm not a huge fan of onion skins, but in this case, they definitely help to keep you on track. Okay, let's see if that got rid of the egregious chatter. Yep, there we go. There's still a little bit of a, I mean, there's a little bit of vibration to it, but it's just not, you're not going to notice that. But the chatter that was there a moment ago was definitely unacceptable. Okay. So, boom. Alright, I think I'm sick of this. I think it's been 3 hours. Now, technically it hasn't been 3 hours. It's been 2.5 because I actually started the streaming 15 minutes before I went live. But I think what I'm going to do here is I am going to create a raster level. Okay? What the heck? Alright, there we go. And now I'm going to grab some nice dark green color and fill the whole freaking screen. Okay, so now if I drag this back to here. Well, actually, I don't think I want to. How do we want to do this? See, because technically we probably kind of sort of need a bit of a foreground too. Well, call me a bonehead. I'm going to go ahead and use my old oil paint brush. Just because I can. So I'm going to kind of went down this road, I think it was yesterday, and it didn't turn out. This is the kind of thing that's easier to do in Krita, frankly. This type of animation. I don't know, maybe I'll start busting out Krita again. I've been pretty much out of Krita for the last couple weeks. I've really been anchored to Tahoma, but I have run into a few things that would really be easier in Krita. Particularly here because just for, you know, like foliage, this kind of stuff, you know, it's just, that's where a more dedicated paint program tends to excel. But if we keep our background simple-ish like this, you know, just suggest the sort of noise of the grass. And then what we could do as well is we could just, we'll just use a smart raster level here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go like this, and then turn this color like the dark green, B key. All right, and I'm just going to add a little bit of noise here. that's in front. And then we're probably going to want to do a little more with shadows. You know, to punch up the tent, because it's pretty drab right now. It's pretty drab. But it looks like that's going to be okay. Yeah, I think the thing to do is let's do a simple. I'm going to solo this layer. I'm going to just go ahead and make it darker back here. Maybe I'll even punch that up with the airbrush, so that we can then come back in with just a shadow layer and give it some interaction with the movement of the character. Obviously, you guys are out there going, yeah, Dave, you know how to finish a sentence, don't you? I think you do. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to grab the airbrush. And just kind of, it's not the greatest airbrush. It's probably one of the worst airbrushes I've ever used, actually, is the My Paint airbrush. The implementation is as simplistic as you can get, which is basically to make the stamping of the color really transparent, and then but just have a lot of them. So it's really a pretty lame airbrush. Usually when I do something with a lot of airbrushing in OpenToonz or Tahoma, I actually blur it. I just blur it so it looks more like a real airbrush. So yeah, it's pretty awful. It's pretty awful. But it's good enough. Awful and good enough. Okay? So, as you can see, if we punch this up with some shadows, I think we'll be in good shape. So, the only thing I'm seeing here, though, that's a little problematic is... Yep, right there. Watch Tahoma blow up now. I better save my work. I forgot the shadow on the hilt of the sword. There. Hey, Claude, how you doing, man? Yeah, I think I wasn't it you who was asking some questions on Darren's stream, and I said I was going to show, you know, character animation, frame by frame character animation, which is pretty much what we've done today. So if you go back and watch this video, you're going to see a lot about creating frame by frame character animation in Tahoma. That's for sure. Now, I have not spoken exhaustively about, you know, every single tool I'm using, and okay, so now we have a couple interesting choices to make. We could just add some dimensionality to the tent. If we're going to do that, what I would do is I would actually make this color very, very transparent, like that, so that as things move, we can actually build up a little bit of, as I say, dimensionality on this tent. Okay, so in other words, I'm not making the column transparent. That would make everything that I paint equally come down in transparency. What I'm doing is I'm adding transparency to the color itself, so that when it renders, I can actually build this up like so. Like if I add two shapes and then go like this, you'll see that it'll render that way as well. Whereas if you do the transparency on the level, then you're not really painting a transparent grayish thing. You're actually just painting solid black, and then the whole level gets, you know, turned transparent. So, and the reason I do it that way is because then I can actually add a white layer as well, and that's also very, very transparent. I think I want to put this at about 10. And then you could go in like this and add highlights like that, right? So now this can become a bit of work, because if I'm gonna punch up the tent this way, I'm giving myself a lot of work to do, right? Because I'm gonna have to address that in every single frame where it moves. So that's kind of a choice I need to make, right? So the way I thought I would approach it is to just get the animation blocked in with a single shadow here. And let me just check something here. Okay, that's really wrong. What we really should be doing here is grabbing all of this, Control C, okay, erase this, get that out of there, and hit Control V, sorry, S key, Control V, so that we're making the shadows exactly the same on every frame where nothing else has changed. Okay, so there it changed. So now, I didn't get that right, sorry about that. Oh, fiddle-dee-dee. Guess I need to follow the arc of this wrinkle a little better. And then just kind of check my work. We're hoping and praying that Tahoma's not going to decide to blow up out of the blue, but so far it doesn't seem to want to today. I mean, it actually did one time, but recently it doesn't seem to be. So, almost got it blocked in. And that's kind of an error right there. Yep, you can't accept that. Nope. Got to get all the way to that edge. Okay. So, wait, do you draw everything without a sketch? Well, no, I mean, I often have, I mean, usually there's a pencil test. In this case, what I had was a storyboard drawing, a single storyboard drawing, and I probably was a little bolder than normal as far as just going ahead and going straight to ink, just because I kind of knew what I was doing. I've drawn this character a million times, and you know, so I kind of knew where we were headed. But yeah, as I say, this is where what I'm doing right now, you want to be really careful, because I blocked in all these animation keyframes, but within there might be a sequence here of 4 or 5 keys where excuse me, where some things are moving but other things aren't moving. And the things that aren't moving, you don't want to redraw, like the shadows the way I'm doing, because you're going to introduce chatter every single time. So that's where we have to be a little more careful about cutting and pasting shapes and just kind of working back and forth in time, again, so you're not introducing chatter into your shot without meaning to. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, hang in there, it may become clear. Okay, so I'm going to put that shadow in there, and here I can, because she is moving, can probably get away with drawing another shape. Here, same situation, she's moving, so let's go ahead and add another shape. Here, frankly, I'm not happy with this, because you notice here the shadow comes out to here. If I just extend it out, you're going to get a little bit of an overlap between these two shapes that are transparent, and what's going to happen is they're going to double up and become more opaque in that zone. So I need to be a little more careful. This is where this is one of those rare cases where I probably would use onion skins. So let's put an onion skin there. Yeah, it's not really showing it. Well, it's because the onion skins are green. Ha! The onion skins are green and they're showing up over the grass. So what I need to do here is just be really careful there. That's probably more like what I should have done in the first place. Okay, so there we're good. Here, good example of what I was talking about. So I'm going to hit the S key and I'm going to grab this shape, Control C, and now here I want to hit the S key, Control V, and just paste it in, because there's just no way I'm going to draw it the same way twice. S key, V, same thing here. And every single thing, every shadow is going to have to be approached this way, where you're iteratively going back and forth and making sure that you're not accidentally allowing some chatter to sneak in. And I've certainly done it in my time, no question about it. So I hope that makes sense. It's a real problem. I mean, if you miss it, you're going to wind up with an animation that just chatters all over the place, and you're going to be like, oh man, this really sucks. Okay, so now what we're going to do is approach it from the opposite side. Here. That one, I would say we can redraw. That one we can redraw. Things are in motion. Hold on. That's wrong. Undo that. Okay, so as she rises up, the extent of this shadow needs to keep coming out, right? Like that. We, you know, you get a lot of production value from shadows. I mean, they're really pretty simple way to snap it up. Now, if you were to say, well, all along here, I really don't feel like the shadows were as dense as they. Fortunately, on these two frames, we've got a little problem with the hand. I thought it wasn't going to matter, but it's going to matter. So I'm going to take the magnet tool and hope that I can make this work. Yeah, I'm just going to take the magnet tool and fix it. So we kind of got away with murder on this one, guys. We got away with it this time. And, you know, this probably should be actually stretched out a bit that way. I mean, things are in motion, so if it doesn't line up perfectly, you're probably not going to see it. But, you know, on the other hand, why be a complete slop hog for no good reason, right? So, the magnet tool, it's useful. You know, just like you can do with the Blender grease pencil. You know, Tianara, gosh, about her shadow on the ground. I mean, I feel like we really need to have a cast shadow, so let's do it. Let's just go here to the ground. Let's just insert a level, and let's just do it the obvious way, which is to create a... Did I just create a vector level? Yeah, I did. Okay. Hit the B key, and now what I want to do is I just want to put a cast shadow here like that. All right, and then I'm going to tone down the opacity like so. And now let's just work out from there. And I'm really gonna play this loose. I'm just gonna. Well, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna save my work. But I wonder what happens if I hit insert. Yeah, it doesn't do it. Okay, so I'm gonna just draw that here. Okay, so she's rising up. Remember, this is in front of the ground but behind her, so I don't have to worry about overlapping her. Maybe a little out like that. Okay, so boom, 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 boom. Okay, I'm gonna just hit a dot, and there it happened. There it happened. Okay, so I think I figured it out. The thing that makes Tahoma blow up when you're creating vector levels, auto creation of frames, is to click in the let's see here. Where's my mouse? Okay, because Tahoma's blown up, I can't show it, so I need to reload it. But let me give you a second here to reload Tahoma. And in the meantime, we'll do a quick review of some of the stuff that's been going on. And then this is the way our scene that we're working on right now is shaping up. But yeah, okay. So here's what you don't want to do is you got a vector level and you want to auto create a frame. It appears to me that what you do want to do is click and draw a shape. What you don't want to do, which I do all the time with smart raster levels, is you don't want to go to a new frame and just click like a dot. Just go boop for the sole purpose of creating a frame. That's what you don't want to do because it, for whatever reason, seems to make Tahoma blow up. So when I go to create something, I want to actually draw something. Now if I drew some nonsense shape up here, like if let's try it. So if you want to guard against that bug, what you do is you'd come up here off screen and draw a shape. And that creates the new frame that you wanted to draw on so that you can then toggle between them and know where your next shape is going to want to be drawn. Okay, in this case, gosh, I think I'm going to put the onion skins in there so I can trace this. And I can just make that a closed shape. Here, oh heck. Since she is in motion, I'll go ahead and put the shadow in there like so. Here, okay, she's starting to rise. So again, I'm going to draw a shape just so Tahoma doesn't blow up. And that way, sorry, that was not what was supposed to happen. Let me see what I have here. Why do we have... I'm a little weirded out here because we have another cell. Okay, I'm going to just pretend that I'm going to ignore that. If you guys don't even know what the heck I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is draw this shape and then let this extend out just a little bit because as she's rising up, yeah. So now again, I'm going to draw a shape so we don't trigger the bug. And now I'm just going to fill all this in and again let this come out just a little bit more. Same situation. This will all make sense in a minute, guys. Okay, so now let's go to rendered mode. Yes, as you can see, that worked perfectly. And what we'll do is, this is column 2. Let's go into our schematic in the effects schematic. And let's put a blur on column 2. I want the cast shadow to have a little bit of a blur to it. So let's make that blur. You can see that's obviously way too much. So let's make the blur like 8 pixels. Okay, so it just softens up that cast shadow. Okay, so now let's just render it. And the only other thing I want to change though before I render it is her outlines are actually too black. So as you can see, it's probably more like that, a little bit gentler outline color. So Control Shift R, and now let's go back over to Vegas. I guess it could be because you've got auto close and autofill set and the shadow is too small. It could be. It could be because the shape, because a dot does not constitute a shape. That's still a bug in the software for sure, but it does. Okay, I think we're okay here. So, yeah, I mean, it's still a bug because we've uncovered a way of blowing up the program. But yeah, that does make sense. If auto close, let's find out. Save all. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go here on this level. And if I just draw a dot, it will cause it to crash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the B key, save my work so I don't have to lose anything. And what I'm going to do is turn these guys all off so that we're just drawing lines. That's what we're going to try to do. And I'm going to go dot. Okay, so again, now it didn't cause a crash. Dot. Still didn't cause a crash. I did it twice because the first time I actually did draw a line, which might have circumvented the problem. So if you're using auto close, auto group, auto fill to draw closed filled shapes, don't do what I just did. If you're going to add another frame and you want it to be auto created, actually draw a shape that needs to be filled or you're going to trigger that bug. Okay? So for my purposes, we're good. In fact, I'm not going to save this. I'm going to just reload this scene and discard the changes because that. I'm so used to doing D to make a duplicate, and I didn't know that Alt-D was... So you hit Alt-D, and there you go. Yes, that would be way more sensible. So that's probably the advisable course of action, is learn the Alt-D shortcut. Okay, so now I see OBS is acting stupid again. Let me look here. Okay, so this is an earlier shot where we were seeing the tent. And here, gosh, what do we want to do here? I think, gosh, it's just that, you know, we could go as far as we want to go with the detail on this tent, and I'm pretty fried. I'm getting, usually after 2 or 3 hours, I'm just like ready for a break. So I think I'm gonna call it, good, and revisit this shot after a while to decide how much detail I really want to add. So I'm basically ready to quit. Let me see what we have in our edit at this point. So Mel scurries up the hill. Mel scurries up the hill, peeks out, ducks away. Now he's being a little more cautious. And then this is the shot we just did. And it goes by quick. There's some things about it I'm not really loving. And that's another reason why I think I want to quit, because I'm not really totally satisfied with our visuals here. The biggest problem with this is the stupid tent color really is like the same as her garment color, so she doesn't pop off the screen very well. Another thing we can do that would probably actually be really well advised in this case, in this scene more than some, would be to create a raster level. Boom. Let's just do an overlay to punch this up a little bit, because it's pretty flat, right? So what I'm going to do is just go like this, extend this down to here, grab my airbrush, and I'm just gonna go like this. Okay? It really hardly matters what the color is, actually. I just want to introduce a gradient like this so that our tension is drawn just to Tianara. Okay? And you say, wow, that's pretty bombastic there, Dave. You're right. Just stay with me for a minute. Now I'm going to go into the schematic, and I'm going to take column 7, and the first thing I'm going to do is blur it as well, so that our airbrush effect really looks like an airbrush, because the My Paintbrush's version of an airbrush is pretty awful. So now there you go. You got a nice gradient. But now what we want to do is what we're going to do is expand this box a little bit so we can see what the heck we're doing. Here's our output from our scene. Here's the blurred gradient I just added. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an effect between the scene and the actual output of the scene. And the effect is going to be layer blending overlay. Okay? The foreground is going to be the gradient, and the background is going to be the scene. And then what I'm going to do is just dial it in. Okay, so something like that looks pretty good. It just punches up the overall color. it's probably a little extreme, but I think I can mitigate that a little bit by actually increasing the blur. This blur, let's just make this like a 200 pixel blur. Yeah, see, that's way better. And I'm even gonna I'm actually gonna go in and hit my airbrush, and believe it or not, I'm gonna go like this. I'm actually gonna work a little bit of that into my character. And as she rises up, that'll be diminished somewhat. So we still need a little more detail in the tent as far as maybe some highlights or something, but I think the other thing I want to do is take the, let's see here. Yeah, I want to take these shadows that are on column 6 and I want to give them a blur as well, more like this one. So I'm going to go Control C, Control V. I'm going to pipe this through the blur, get rid of that connection, and now probably about 12. So I'm just going to soften those shadows a little bit. I'm not sure I'm making the greatest judgment here as far as how soft those shadows should be, but and I'm going to turn this down to like 28. Yeah, I don't know. It seems to maybe look a little better, but yeah, that's actually not too bad. Okay, once I see it all in motion, where it sort of blows by and I'm seeing it the way the audience would see it, it's actually not too bad. So I don't like the chatter and the shadows on her face, though. That's going to be problematic right there. Boop. Yeah, right there. Not good, not good, not good. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about right. Let's turn that off like that. Okay, now for our purposes, we can turn this level off. We don't need it in our live view while we're working. It's still going to render. If you didn't want it to render, you'd click this icon. But if you don't want it to be in the live view, you just turn it off. No big deal. So the only other thing I need to do in order to be able to call it a day is that right there. So we've got this to this on this level, down, down. Okay, I'm going to hit the S key, grab this shape, hit Control C, go to this frame, and hit the S key and go Control V. And I think that will do the trick. I think that's going to get rid of our chatter. And I think I'm about to be done. Yep, I'm done. I'm done for now, guys. I'm going to sign off. It's been fun. It's been challenging. A lot of food for thought. And as you know, there absolutely